to go on that trip and not, and to recall it and everything, she just, so, I said my goodbye, and I think that's how I felt, when I left, and she, felt she's at peace now, and, she was struggling, but, I know she's in a better place, and, so, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sharon.
Anyone else? I'm going to say a few more words, but if anyone wants to jump up here, raise your hand, interrupt me, and I'll step back, because I want you all to have the opportunity. As Mike mentioned, my first visit with Kathy as a chaplain with St. Joseph Mercy Hospice was on February 23rd. Corinne, you can probably identify with this part because we had just started a whole new system, where before we had to document everything, our laptops, if not right while we're visiting the patient, as soon as we got out to the car, as soon as we were able. Well, that week we went live with a new system where we carried a little tablet around with us. And Kathy was my very first patient to try out this new system. And I'm getting out of the car, I was parked right out where I am now, coming in with my tablet, and I must have hit the wrong key because everything was gone. And my first visit with Kathy was a mess. She's trying to help me figure out this tablet, and she didn't know anything about it, and I knew even less. But from that first visit, there were some things that I saw in her. When I was in seminary, I had the good fortune to be able to take some classes from the famous Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a real pioneer in ministering, working with dying people, terminally ill people. And she always said that for all of her education, leading up to being who she was, her best teachers were her patients. And I've always kept that in my mind, for these 30, 40 more years, and I like to think. My parishioners when I was a minister, or when I've been a chaplain with Mercy Hospice. What can I learn from patients? And as I get older and older and older, this is becoming even more important to me. How will I deal with something like what Kathy was dealing with? How will I face a terminal illness? I go in for a wellness visit like we're supposed to every year. One of these days, the doctor's going to sit me down and say, I have bad news for you. How will I deal with that? How will I face a terminal illness? How will I face my end of life? So I'm trying to learn from patients. Some of the things that I've learned from Kathy, it's going to stay with me. About her courage. The courage that she had through her life. People deal with death often the way they deal with life. And look at the courage that Kathy showed throughout her life, from shinnying up a flagpole to being a single mother, and that's how she faced her death. But it was her faith, a faith that she took through her life, but look what it meant to her as she was facing the end of her life. A faith that was a wonderful example to everybody who knew her, and a wonderful example to me. I just hope and pray that I can have that strong of a faith when I'm facing my end of life. A wonderful teacher. And I think of the way, her creativity. I look at the beautiful jewelry that she's created, her creativity working with Mike and their company, being a mother, the creativity she showed as a mother, and she even showed it as she's facing death. Her thoughts about how she wanted to go out, her bucket list, going to Oklahoma, having not just one service, but 3 or 4 services, wherever there's people that she loved and that she knew would need her. She dealt with death the way she dealt with life. And one thing that I from the first time I met her, without using names, sharing names, I had to tell my wife, I met a woman who, you know, sometimes when people die, they say, oh, they would have done anything for anybody. And sometimes I wonder how true that is, but with Kathy, that was true. She lived that. She put it in action. She put her faith to work. You know, dealing with injured vets, to dealing with Special Olympics children such as her own, to the many, many other. Her internet prayer chain that I heard about the very first time I met her. Not only people that she wanted praying for her, but people that she was so concerned about that she was praying for and meeting over the internet. You know, Kathy was a special person. You know, not everyone is wired the way Kathy was. Not every one of us have that drive and ambition and energy and creativity that Kathy had. We're not all like that. But isn't it wonderful that God created somebody like Kathy and brought her into our life? Because I think that's made our life better. That God created somebody like Kathy and how she has added to the life of all of us. I just want to briefly read one more passage of Scripture that I read with Kathy, and we had a nice talk about it. One of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up, and you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in. You're behind me and you're in front of me. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. It is a mystery. But where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the morning, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. You know, when we say goodbye to Kathy, we're not turning her spirit, her whatever constitutes self in her, to a God that doesn't even know her. We are giving her into the hands of a God that knows her intimately, knows her better than anybody here, believe it or not, knows her better than she knew herself. And I hope that gives everyone here a comfort and a peace, knowing that you have given Kathy over to such a God. And Kathy agreed with me when I read this, that there's just no getting away from God. If she ascends to the highest heights that she has done in her life, or sink to the lowest depths that sometimes facing a terminal illness is, she knew God was with her. She knew that without a doubt. She made it so plain to me and so sure that I knew that about her. At this time, if there's somebody else that would like to say something before we have a closing prayer, please do so.
Just put down a few notes, so I'll be looking at my phone for that. But sorry about being late. I met Kathy probably, was it 3 years ago? I'm pretty bad with time. 3 years ago, and I just want to mention about 6 main things that I've always noticed about her. One is she's always very loyal, so we dealt with a lot of different people in different businesses, different countries, and there were a lot of times when we were contemplating certain business decisions, and the one thing that always stuck out is that anytime she had made a bond with somebody, she had traveled to a lot of places, more places than I probably ever will go, she's probably been to, and the one thing I noticed is she would always make sure that loyalty was a big component of that. So anytime we were thinking, okay, this is what we should do, no, you know what, he's a great guy, we gotta take care of him, this is how we should approach it. So loyalty was a big thing. I come from the north side of India, where women particularly are considered to be extremely strong. These guys, they're very tough women. My mom, my sister, etc. You know, I feel like they can take down some pretty big guys themselves, just mentally and physically. And when I think of Kathy, the whole time, I would say that she was very strong. I think that's one thing I've mentioned to her, to everybody, and interestingly enough, even to people that don't know Kathy. So you know, a lot of times if I see somebody saying something, complaining about maybe an injury or this or that, I start giving them the story of Kathy, and they know her now at this point, but you know, she didn't get to meet all those people. But the point being is her strength and her, I don't know, I feel like if I had to pick somebody to go into battle, and it was like a 6'6" guy over here, you know, another big guy over here, and then there's Kathy, I'd probably take Kathy with me. She'd probably kick their ass and then go a step further. So she was a very tough individual, and it's something that, like I said, I used to tell her that, you know, she's an inspiration to me. I mean, I told even my mom, like I said, who was a very tough person, about you know, Kathy's scenario and the fact that she, you know, complains less than people who deal with a lot less than what she was dealing with. So, you know, I've met a lot of people who had cancer. My father-in-law did, and I feel like there's a few different types of people. Some people, they're constantly complaining about certain things, and they have full right to be able to do so. Then there's people who just kind of take it by the horns and just kind of keep going, and nothing stops them. And I'd say Kathy was one particular individual, really, till the last day. You could tell she was just, you know, she's going to take on life in a certain way. So that was another one. My phone just closed out here, just a second. Excel sheets, I thought, I don't know, some of you will actually find this funny. If you know about Kathy, you know about Excel sheets. And she's very similar to me in that manner, and in fact we connected on that level. Is, you know, we would always, if we were talking about something business related, she would mention she has an Excel sheet for that, I would mention I have an Excel sheet for that, and me and Puneet spent a lot of time basically finding ways to combine her Excel sheets with our Excel sheets. So Excel sheets were a big deal. Microsoft should be proud because at the end of the day, Excel sheets were a big part of her and a big part of me. She always kept organized in that manner, and I think she probably had an Excel sheet for pretty much everything. So like I said, we bonded in that manner. The other last one is that she was very multi-talented. So a lot of times we'd run into situations, as you mentioned, the jewelry, you know, that was something I would see something different on her every time I'd see her, and I'd be like, hey, where'd you get that? And she's like, I made that. And I'm like, wait, but you're supposed to be in bed. Yeah, no, I was sitting yesterday and I felt like, you know, making something, so I decided to make some, you know, and I think there's a lot of people that if they are sick from chemo or whatever it may be, they're just gonna sit there. And it's, like I said, everybody has a right to be able to sit there and relax. I think she was an individual where even when she should be just relaxing, she was out there making jewelry, she's talking to people, she's on the phone. I mean, it was confusing because we knew she had a chemo in the morning, but at night at like 11 p.m. she was writing emails, sending emails out to everybody and making things happen. So, you know, I feel like all throughout the process she was climbing things. She knew how to do this, she knew how to, I mean, there probably wasn't too much she didn't know how to do or hadn't dealt with. And she was a very petite woman, but like I said, she could, I think, kick pretty much anybody I know's ass. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I just say something real quick? My regret is that I didn't get to know her, and then I lived next door to her for 3 or 4 years, and I kind of just knew her more towards the end. But what really I thought was interesting that he touched upon was like her creativity, and just a couple of things that I learned about her over the last month or so was that she had the computer desk that she designed, so Mike made it so she could pull the computer desk over her lap and do her emails, and like you said, go on Facebook, and do the prayer chain, and then the other one was that she had this amazing schedule that she did for the nurses that had all her meds, what she took, what she ate, which, you know, it wasn't on a
It wasn't
computer,
in
it was
It
Excel?
was, oh
It
yeah.
was, of course it was.
the one I saw was handwritten, but it was
Oh.
just, no, she did have, okay, so to me, that was just, you know, showed what a creative person it was, and also that how much she loved Mike and how much she loved June, and how happy she was that, that her kids and his kids together blended so well in such a loving, great family. So it's been a pleasure to meet all of you, and it was a pleasure to know Kathy.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, let me read a prayer. You've probably heard this before. I think this is Kathy's prayer right now. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun of happy